And so there were many spiritual people that spoke. One was the Archbishop of Canterbury, who is quite wise. And he talked about, here's a quote, I'll just kind of let you read it. But he also talked about love. And he said, what is causing our leaders not to act, or to act in the wrong ways, is fear. Fear is holding many of us throughout the planet. And in this country, I would say in particular, fear from what is my job, fear that I'm not going to have enough to eat tomorrow, fear whatever it is. That's why we have the buildup of weapons. And he said, really, if we're people of faith, what we need to be about is love. And I don't mean that in a naive way at all. But love is what really does transform. And we need to be putting out those kind of energies of transformation. And that's what we need to be acting out of. And that is not a grasping kind of behavior at all. And so there were many stories. And someone this morning said earlier that what touches people are stories. And I was very moved by the stories. And I think some of these are the stories that we need to relate to issues like the nuclear energy, nuclear weapons, our armament buildup, the astronomical money we're spending, where we need to be redirecting some of that money for adaptation, mitigation, to address climate change, new technologies, and sustainability. And this was a farmer from Cusco, Peru, who was really quite concerned because the glaciers have dried up. They can no longer grow the food that they had been, and he has difficulty finding food for his children. And he said, we hope this agreement helps Pachamama. He didn't say, we hope this agreement helps our economy. President Obama came over and he said, you have to understand our economy is kind of in the dumps now. We can't commit a whole lot to adaptation. We will commit something, but we can't commit a whole lot. He's talking about, we need to help Pachamama. We are the voices of the glaciers and the mountains. And this woman from Bangladesh, a very powerful story that there's not time to talk about it all, but she is living in that part of Bangladesh that was once land that is now totally underwater after Cyclone Ela last fall. She lost her husband who had to give up farming, so he went in the forest and a tiger ate him. Was put on not on the streets, but out of a home, because that's how women are treated by their husbands' families sometimes in Bangladesh. And so the thing that I found profound is that she thought it was something they were doing wrong, that God was punishing them. These are very simple, humble people. And she said, you know, somebody told her, we aren't doing anything wrong, this is climate change. We're not responsible for this. Those other people in other parts of the world are. And all she says is, I just want a little piece of land to live on. That's all I want, because we're living in water right now. We don't know how to live anymore. And countless, countless women from Africa speaking about the discrepancies in the, from flooding to drought, so that they can't grow food. And what I found fascinating about this is the whole women's voice. And I think we can say this too for the women's voice in terms of the military-industrial complex and the women's voices. Women are affected disproportionately with the climate change. There's a huge gender issue. They are affected the most. And yet they are the voices that are not around the negotiating table. The final negotiations in Copenhagen, there was one female as far as I know, and that was Hillary Clinton, the only one. All the rest men around the table. And that is repeated again and again in state politics, in national politics, and in international. I keep thinking there would be a great difference if women were very strong with their voices and organized together to say this is a concern. I was recently at a meeting where I was given this insight. It was amazing. This was by a national funding group, quite well known. And they had a gathering with some diverse people to talk about I guess, climate change, and they had people of differing viewpoints. And at one point they asked all the men to leave the room. And so there were just women left in the room, and one of them was from a very conservative evangelical organization. And when the men left the room, she said, I couldn't say this when my husband was here, but I'll say it now. I believe climate change is a huge problem, and I'm very, very concerned about the future and my children. I couldn't say that with my husband here, but this is of a great concern to myself and other women. So, you know, I think that we need to, again, be courageous and with those voices of love to speak. Speaking of that kind of courage, the island nations musicians were there from the very beginning, speaking to leaders, bit by bit as they came the whole 2 weeks at Copenhagen into the Bell Center. And this woman was with those. She was with the president from Tuvalu, very tiny island nation, that made their voice known again and again, saying, we have to do something. We cannot let the temperatures rise beyond 1.5 degrees because we will not exist any longer. Now, these are not people of power. They're not people of money. They were there in the masses, coming, spending days in airlines, suffering from the cold. They were freezing while they were there, to speak their truth again, that it might be heard. Yes.
This is Joan. I just thought I'd mention that if you want to see how women of faith can kind of present their way into the negotiating table, you have to see the movie Pray the Devil Back to Hell, about the specific circumstances of Liberia, but it's a very good model for how women can, stop negotiations until their concerns are at the top of the list.
Right, well, and that, I have some other, in a minute, Warren Gothi Mathai was there, and she would be another example. That's very good, thank you, Sean. And there she is. So, Warren Gothi Mathai was there, and she, again, is often the only woman in any negotiating circles of all men around these issues of concern of earth, of future, and of children. A woman who just kind of moves into this and learns as she goes with great courage. The founder of the Green Belt Movement and a Nobel Peace Prize winner. So there were many people like that. Joan is another woman. Again, needing to address theology, science, sexism, and the global perspective. So this was a huge engagement of the civil society, and I think that was the most incredible, amazing, and important thing from Copenhagen, and it's not going to just die there. So there was a march, and it was to be 25,000, then it was 50,000, then it was 75,000. It ended up being a 100,000 person march. It was quite amazing. Very creative, again, with floats, music, dancing, lots of different kinds of placards. A different life is possible. Create sustainable eco-villages. And children and adults, all kinds of people, again, thousands of young people. And humor as well as police there. And while there were some offenses of the police, for the most part they did very good order. Because Copenhagen is a city only the size of Albuquerque. This march was 100,000 people. I couldn't imagine how the police in Albuquerque would react. And the nuclear issue was an issue that was on the table there as well at numerous side sessions. So the hopeful thing is a civil society, and I think we need to keep building on that and working with that and organizing with the civil society. And that happened in the Bella Center as well. We Stand with Africa was a witness that we had one day. And that we also, I think, with the whole nuclear issue, we need to, again, keep promoting renewables and the sustainable. In the work that we do with MACE, the Multicultural Alliance for Safe Environment, we keep saying, instead of uranium mining, what we need in the grants uranium belt is we need renewable energy. We need manufacturing jobs that will help build the solar cells or the windmills. We need all of those things. And nuclear is not the answer. In fact, it uses water that we don't have. A lot of the nuclear plants that already exist have had to close down because of the warming of the waters surrounding them. And again, they're in volatile areas. The other thing that is quite hopeful that I think we need to really continue to encourage a great deal our youth. And as some of us get older, we need to hear this voice that says, where will you be in 2050? Which is not that far away. So who are the people that will be carrying on and working in 2050? And that's what the youth were saying at a youth day in Copenhagen in the Bella Center. And there were many youth there and acting very